Hey, this is Chris. In this video, I want to talk about the tragic shooting in Winder, Georgia, where a 14-year-old boy brought a gun to school, got a gun into school, and killed 4 and injured another 9. And I'd like to share some of my thoughts regarding that and open the door for discussion around that. The first thing I really want to say as a father, as a grandfather, not only to the families at Appalachia High School in Winder, but to so many families who have lost loved ones in these mass school shootings. Not only here, but there are shootings that go on in healthcare facilities and other places where somebody who is deeply disturbed and unable to restrain themselves, that has access to firearms that can cause a lot of destruction, indulges whatever darkness within them, indulges a lot of, I guess I'd say that there is often a mental illness, something's really broken inside that has not been addressed or helped in a way that is beneficial. And these darkened souls, full of hatred and rage and bitterness, bring these weapons into school. And people and families find their lives changed forever. The reality of sin and wickedness and evil in this world is there. We are a world under curse and rebellion against God, and it pervades all of our society. And the pain that you can feel being a victim, being sinned against of this horrendous evil that can be all around us. To lose someone you love, especially a child, to violence is one of the most painful and heartbreaking things that I can ever imagine a family to suffer. As a father and as a grandfather, it is unimaginable to me what I would feel and what I would experience were one of my children or grandchildren to suffer under such violence. And I don't think that there are any words of consolation that can make it better. Sometimes, and you see this in the Bible, the Old Testament, when somebody suffers and is a victim of such violent and heartbreak and loss, all you can do is sit in ashes and silence beside them to let them know that you're there in their pain and in their suffering. Because there's no words really that you can say to make things better. And people try their best to say words that often come across and often are just dismissive of the suffering and the heartbreak and the loss. And sometimes people end up putting words in God's mouth and speaking for God as if they knew what God is thinking and feeling, and trying to explain why this hard thing happened to this family, to this person, when we don't know specifically why. We know that God is there in our heartbreak, in our suffering, in our misery. And many of the Psalms speak to this as people write about encountering God in the midst of incredible loss and hardship and pain. And we can encourage people to bring all that to God. But just to make light of things. I've thought about this when people experience hardship. Oftentimes we say you're in our thoughts, in our prayers. And most of the time, let's be honest, if anything, what we've done is prayed a cursory prayer to the effect of, oh God, be with this family as they suffer. But we're not down on our knees before God with tears and agony and sharing in their suffering, crying out to God in any way that would convey that we are with them in their suffering and their hardship. And to me, it's just so trite in the aftermath of these school shootings to just say, you're in our thoughts and our prayers. So many of these people are suffering and are in the depths of despair and agonizing. And we just say this little thing and then just move on, thinking we've done our Christian duty. In James chapter 2, it talks about what do we do if we see somebody that's hungry or lacking clothing, and just saying, well, be warm and be well fed. Hey, I'm with you. My thoughts and prayers are with you. And you just move on. James said, what good is that? Rather, what we need to do is provide the food and the clothing, that we show the genuineness of our faith, not in the words we speak, but in the acts and the deeds that we do. I guess my dog is being a guardian right now. She keeps this up. I might have to stop and restart it. But I really, really think that we need to be thinking about these things as Christians and to begin to ask questions and begin to say some things are just not acceptable in our society, and to begin to talk about these as Christians and to begin to articulate them. I saw a news report where the shooter's father was arrested. And I'm not going to say names of the shooter. I don't want to platform it anyway. Even my platform is so tiny and small. If there's any chance that what this young man did for fame and recognition, I don't want to give him that by saying his name or saying his father's name. It was good to see that the father was arrested for providing the gun, because my first thought is, how in the world does a 14-year-old who cannot legally buy a gun get a gun? And this is one of the things that run through so many of these shootings. How do they get the guns? How is it that many of these young men and women with a history of mental health issues get access, often through their parents, of guns? And why aren't those parents, why shouldn't every parent in the United States know this, that if your child gets your gun and shoots up a school, you are going to be tried and sent to prison as an accessory to murder? Every parent should know that. Do not take a chance. Do not trust your minor child. Secure your firearms. Don't let them have access. Because if you do, you are going to be responsible for what they do. And a lot of Christian parents push back on that Second Amendment, all that stuff. But let me say this. Christian parent, you're always talking about you want to be responsible for raising your own child. And you don't want the government to interfere in the raising of your child. Then be responsible. Do not let your child have access unsupervised to a firearm. And the responsible thing, Christian parent, if your child does that and shoots up a school, that you be tried and convicted as an accessory to murder, unless they happen to be the brilliant gun safe cracker or some way they broke in and stole the weapon or something. But there should be a consequence that the parents get tried along with the child that they let get access to their firearm. The second thing that I thought was really interesting as I watched the news is that this child had been reported yet again. We have a child interacting with the mental health system, with the legal system, with law enforcement, with social services. And yet again, there were warning signs, but not enough warning signs we hear to take any action. And I think as Christians, we need to begin to say, we've got to take these mental health issues with our children serious. We do not take bullying in school seriously enough. We don't take the fact that these shooters are isolated and lone and dying inside and getting corrupting online influencing, guiding them in a very destructive direction. And we do not take mental health seriously enough. We do not take these things happening. And then when they happen and when a shooting occurs, we shake our head and we express outrage. The FBI interviewed that kid. How come something wasn't been done? But they say, well, we don't have any probable cause to arrest the child or to do this or to do that. Well, there's a difference. Sometimes people show the inclination, they show they're deeply unwell and they need intervention, but it doesn't rise to the level of arrest, of prosecution, everything. But what's being done? Are we not demanding more resources be put into the mental health of children and to be identifying these things? If we want a society, as our Supreme Court and everybody says, where there's unfettered right to guns, then the cost of unfettered right to guns, to me, is that we have to invest in mental health. We have to invest in identifying those people that are most vulnerable to perpetrate those acts and have follow-up systems in place to really deal with this kind of stuff. Because how many more times do we have to hear, yeah, the police were aware, but there wasn't enough to arrest them and take them off the street. And then 6 months, a year later, they end up shooting a school, knowing that they had mental health needs. And I think that's the important thing that we've got to recognize. That's another question I'm asking. What are we doing with these kinds of things? As a Christian, I want what's broken in a child addressed before they become a mass school shooter. We need to deal with the hearts and the lives and what is in these kids that's broken way before that. And then the last thing, the last question that I have is this. Why are we raising our kids where the biggest threat to them is gun violence? where children, as they age and grow older and become more aware that each day at school may be their last day at school. And maybe it's not even school. Be aware that they could be somewhere out on the street, and that could be their last day. That kind of level of uncertainty in life is damaging to children. Back when I was in school, and I was involved in this, I wasn't a Christian back then, you solve things with a fist. Maybe if you're really serious, it would be a knife. But now we've graduated to where the greatest fear a child might have is not that somebody would kick their feet out from under them and slam them into a locker and call them names, but that somebody might shoot them. And again, my question is, what are we going to do about this, Christian? This isn't right. The Bible condemns murder. It's not right. And we need to be asking questions. We need to be thinking about this. Why do kids spend more time drilling for active shooters than for tornadoes and lightning strikes or whatever, earthquakes? Is this the kind of society that we want to encourage and foster? And what are we going to do about it as Christians? And I think these are things that as Christians we really need to think about and ask of ourselves. Because just saying thoughts and prayers to the victims of school shootings, even though prayer is important, I'm not minimizing prayer. I'm just talking about just the thoughts and prayers, dismissive, like James talks about, be warmed and be filled when you see somebody that's without clothing and food. What are we going to do? James said, faith without works is dead. What are we going to do? How are we going to show our faith in Jesus Christ? How are we going to show our esteem and the value of life of each child being an image bearer of the God Almighty? How are we going to do that? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And I would encourage all of us to think about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. May God bless.